Okay, so this episode was a lot of action and very little dialogue. I thought it was really appropriate that it started without any, like, what you missed last time scenes. It's just like, here we are. Nothing else matters. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. We're not catching you up. This is all battle, the whole episode, and we told you this is what you're going to get. It's what you got. So it begins with Sam breathing heavily and getting weapons. Sam, like, the last episode, John told Sam he could go to the crypt if he wanted, and Sam was like, I'm the only one who's ever killed a White Walker. Like, why are you telling me to do this? And acting like he was super brave. And then this whole episode, he was like the scaredest little bitch. I was kind of like really disappointed with him, to be honest. Like, yeah, it's scary, but everyone there is like, you know, doing what they're supposed to do. And he's like, ah, the whole time. And you're just like, come on, dude. Like, come on. You know what you're getting into. So, come on. Anyway. So it's everyone getting where they're supposed to be. Lady Mormont, love her. Shouting orders at everyone and everyone just doing everything that she tells them to. Great. Tyrion starts to head down to the crypt and passes Bran. Bran gives him a nod while he's on his way to the tree where he's going to wait for the Night King. And then you get a shot of the front lines, and then it cuts to Davos, Sansa, and Arya at the top of the castle wall. Then Dany and Jon flying their dragons into their lookout point. Then it shows the Unsullied and the Dothraki ready to go. Then it cuts to the front lines with Brienne, Podrick, Jaime, Grey Worm, Tormund Barrack, and then the Hound and Gendry arrive next to Edison and Sam on his other side, and Edison comments that Sam took his time. Then you've got Jorah and Ghost even more forward next to the Dothraki. And you've got Jon and Dany overlooking the troops from their cliff, and Arya watching as well. Then you see the horse, and Davos, I think, is the first person to see the horse arrive. And you've got Melisandre, who hasn't been in this season yet, and she arrives. And, oh, Melisandre, I have, like, hated her ever since Shireen. And before the episode, I talked to my dad before every episode. It's like our thing. So we were talking, and I said, you know, I just hope that Melisandre arrives and does some, like, badass magic shit and then dies afterward. And I think, you know, got what I wanted. So she comes in and approaches Jorah and, you know, asks if he can speak to the Dothraki, and he's like, yeah. And so she tells him to have them raise her swords, and she lights them on fire, and so you see all the Dothraki swords in flames, and you see hope in Sansa's eyes, and everybody kind of like their morale picks up a little, and you see Edison smiles, and, you know, it's a little bit more, okay, maybe we have a chance, you know, kind of thing. And so then it shows Melisandre going toward the castle. She passes Grey Worm. They exchange Valar Morghulis, Valar Dohaeris, and then she goes in. Davos tells them to open the gates. She goes in. Davos greets her, and she says, you don't need to have me executed. I'll be dead before the dawn. So Melisandre, we get a sense here she knows some of what's going to happen, and she knows that this is her time. I think, you know, she knows that this is what the Lord of Light has prepared her for. Then you see her and Arya stare each other down and kind of wondering what's going on there. Like, she's on Arya's list for taking Gendry, and also they both fucked Gendry, so that was kind of, you know, whatever. I think Arya's kind of like, what the hell is she doing here? And I think Melisandre at this point knows the role Arya's going to play. I think she's known it since season 2, honestly, when you look back at their exchange. But I'll talk about that later when we get to their scene together. So after that, the Dothraki and Jorah and Ghost rush the oncoming army. And Dany and Jon are watching from above, and the people with the catapults launch the fireballs. Then the Dothraki pretty much get immediately wiped out, with the exception of Jorah, Ghost, and a few of the Dothraki and the horses that are able to run back away from the army of the dead. Then you see everyone just look completely horrified because it happened like ran in dead, like nothing. You couldn't even see the whites at this point. It was just, you just see all the flames disappear and everyone's either running back or dead. So anyway, at that point, Dany is like, fuck this plan. You know, they have their plan where Dany and Jon are supposed to wait for the Night King and watch out for Bran and make their move at that point. And Dany at this point is like, my people are dying. My army is like, there goes half my army. I got the Unsullied, I got the Dothraki, and there goes half of it. Okay. And she is like, I gotta help these people. And if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I have been like so over Dany this season. But in this moment, she really like redeemed herself for me in this whole episode, really. But for her to finally be like, okay, no, I've got to do something. I'm still for the people, still about my people, like, which is what her whole thing has been the whole time. It was great. Jon tries to stop her and remind her about their plan and that the Night King is coming, and she's like, the dead are already here. Fuck that. So, yeah, thought it started off really, really strong. And, yeah.
Then you just see everyone getting ready for, like, the onslaught of chaos. Dany and Jon get in on the dragons, and they're up in the air. And then it's just kind of like a wave of whites, and it's just a bunch of blurry, dark chaos after that. Arya tells Sansa to go to the crypt because she can't fight, and then Sansa's like, meh, meh. And then Arya's like, take this knife, and then she's like, I don't even know how to use a knife. Why were you staying up there if you can't use a knife? Like, what were you gonna do? Like, mean mug them? Anyways, so then, whole bunch of fighting. Sam almost gets gone, and then Ed saves him, and then Ed gets stabbed in the back, and you're like, bye, Ed. I knew that was coming, so not surprised you're the first person to die. And then Sam freaks out and just, like, runs away. And then, Sansa goes to the crypt. There's a bunch of flying, and a blizzard comes in, and it's just snowing. People are getting destroyed. Then Lyanna's like, open the gate. Everyone runs through the gate, and then, except the Unsullied, they stay out there, and they're still trucking. Just a bunch of people running, and they close the gate, and then they're like, light the trenches, and Davos is like signaling, but it's like a friggin' blizzard in the air, so Dany doesn't see anything. And then they're like, oh cool, well now we have to figure out how to light the trenches without the dragon, so that's not helpful.
So Melisandre comes out and she starts walking towards the trench being protected by the Unsullied, and she grabs a hold of one of the wooden sticks and starts praying to the Lord of Light to bring light to them, just like she did with the Dothraki swords. And you can see just the look in her eyes. She's super tense because she's praying, and the Lord of Light is not responding, and the White Walkers are just rushing towards her. She's just like, oh my god, and her eyes get like really wide. And she just keeps praying and praying louder and louder. You can hear the desperation in her voice. You can hear that she's super stressed out, and maybe the Lord of Light is just like over her, over everything, just like, we can't beat this, and then boom, everything lights up. And then we move down to the crypts where everybody's just super tense, and they start talking, Sansa and Tyrion, about how they both are together, probably in their final day. And Tyrion's like, I should be up there, just like in the other battle where I remember the green fire. I should be there. Somebody's not seeing something. And Sansa snaps back at him like, hey, if you be up there, we'll all be dead. And then they start reminiscing about how they were married and maybe they should have stayed married or whatever. And Sans tells him that it wouldn't have worked because of the mother of dragons. And then they start arguing that that maybe that wouldn't have happened, depending on how the story would have played out. And they say something like, and look at us, look at where we are. Without her, there would be no problem at all. And Miss Sunday kind of snaps back at them like, yeah, without her, there wouldn't be any problem. We'd already be dead. And absolutely, she's totally right. Oh my gosh, she's such a wise little lady. So after Melisandre lights up the trench, we see that Theon says they lit the trench, and he tries to kind of apologize to Bran, and he tells him that, like, you don't have to worry, everything you did brought you here, brought you home. And that kind of takes us back to season 1, where he was sort of a hostage to the Starks, but he was raised more like a brother to Robb and Jon and Arya and Sansa. Also, he is probably saying sorry that he kind of faked his and Rickon's death when he took Winterfell to prove to his father that that he could do something for himself. Then back in the castle, that we see that all the major characters that are remaining in the story, Gendry, Jorah, Jaime, Brienne, everybody's just like leading their charges, getting everybody back to the top so they can start shooting the whites with their arrows. And we see that Grey Worm is just like scared to death. Also, the whites are like fire ants at this point, just swarming the castle and like climbing on top of each other so they can reach up and try to like eat people and killing them to have them become part of their army. We see that Brienne saves Jaime and fight back. They kind of like support each other at this point. Sam almost dies again, and Jorah saves him. And we see the Hound is just like completely frozen. Maybe it's PTSD from the sight of all the fire. And Beric kind of like, yo, come on, we need you, snap out of it. And then we see Arya start like kicking butt, doing her dance from season 1, just like using her super cool weapon, killing everybody, and that kind of like snaps the Hound out of it.
So then the stupid giant comes in and he throws Lyanna across the room, and then goes to the Hound, and he's like freaking out, and I don't know his name, Left Eye is like, you gotta do your thing, we gotta keep fighting. And he's like, this is stupid and we're all gonna die, you whore. And then the Left Eye's like, well, that girl's still going and she's like half your size, and like shows Arya, who is like running into a room being followed by a bunch of whites. And so Hound's like, fine, and like gets up to go save her. And then meanwhile, the giant's all doing stuff, and little Lyanna gets up, and then she runs, and she's like, ah! And then he just like picks her up, and he squishes her, and you're like, no! Ah! And then she just like power move, fucking stabs him in the eye, and he whatever dissipates, and it's pretty awesome. But then she's gone, which is not awesome. So yeah.
Okay, so now we see Arya alone in a room, and she's like trying to catch a break, and then she hears something like cracking, crush, and drag, and she realizes that she's surrounded by whites. So she performs all her super cool maneuvers of moving like a cat, super stealthy, to move from bookcase to bookcase and escape the whites. But she then crawls under the table and she realizes that her blood from her face is starting to drip and making the dripping water noise. It's really calling the White Walkers to come get her. And as soon as like one White Walker, White, is going to kneel down and look under the table where she is, she moves up and runs away, and then she grabs a book from one of the bookcases and throws it far away so she can make her escape. And that's how she leaves this really dark room that was super quiet and had the atmosphere like super tense. And then she catches her breath again outside that room, and then she hears the whites are coming to get her, and they run through two doors and kind of trample her. Then we move down to the crypts where everybody is just super quiet and super scared. And we begin to hear that the fighters that are outside are knocking on the door like, hey, open up, open up, open up. And you can just see the fear in people's eyes, and they focus the camera on Sansa, and she has such expressive eyes, and she's just like, holy crap, everybody's dying, holy crap, I can't do anything, oh my god, please make it stop. And then everything stops and everything's super quiet, and you can see that her face kind of relaxes a little bit from tense to sad, and everybody's just like, okay, we just lost a bunch of people. Then we go back to Arya being pinned down by the White Walkers, and Beric and the Hound find her, and Beric throws his sword, his flaming sword, towards the White so that he can save Arya. They grab her and they run away, but then Beric kind of uses his body as a shield for the Hound and for Arya to escape the Whites. And then they get into, well, you see that Beric is being stabbed repeatedly by the Whites and attacked, and he's been beaten, and then the Arya grabs one of the big ass weapons and kind of slashes some of the Whites off Beric, but the Hound grabs her and tells her to move, and they run away to another room, and then they grab Beric and they shut the door and kind of barricade the door as we see that Beric is slumping down.
Okay, so Beric dies to save Arya, and Melisandre comes in and says that's the reason the Lord of Light brought him back so many times. He served his purpose. And Arya and Melisandre are like, I know you, we've met before, and they talk about their previous meeting, at which point Melisandre had told Arya they would meet again at the end of the world, and here they are. And Arya says that Melisandre also told her that she would shut many eyes forever, and was right about that too. I think, like, I feel really stupid not catching this when I went back and rewatched the whole series before this season, that I didn't catch that. But the word forever really is what sticks out here, because shut many eyes, kill people, but as long as the Night King's alive, you're not killing them forever. So I think this moment, this emphasis shows that Arya is the one. She's the one who's supposed to kill the Night King, shut many eyes forever. And I think that is apparent to Arya once Melisandre says brown eyes, green eyes, and blue eyes. I think that's the moment where Arya realizes, I'm the one who has to kill the Night King, not Jon and Daenerys with the dragons. It's got to be me. It's my moment. Melisandre asks her, what do we say to the god of death? And Arya says, not today, and runs out. And so I think Melisandre knew all along it had to be Arya. I think that she's known that that's the purpose. That's why when she showed up, she told Davos that she would be dead before the dawn. I think she knew that her purpose was to make Arya see her purpose, and she also knew that that was Beric's purpose. So I think Melisandre kind of all along has known that Arya's the one. I think it took her a while to realize it. You know, she got it wrong with Stannis and whoever else, but I think eventually she knew that Arya was the one. So anyway, this I think was maybe the most important scene that ties to the end and how the Night King dies. So yeah. All right, so we have a couple of people out this week, so I'm going to jump in for them. So at this point, Arya had just finished talking to Melisandre and ran off to kill the Night King, and Theon is defending Bran with the rest of the Ironborn, and he announces that the dead are coming now and tells them to make every shot count, and they start firing arrows at the dead. Meanwhile, the Night King is flying in on Viserion and Jon's dragon, Rhaegal, start fighting. And the Night King falls from Viserion and Jon falls from Rhaegal. Then it cuts to people in the castle that are fighting, and Dany and her dragon hone in on the Night King, and she blasts him with fire, but he doesn't burn, and they're kind of like, what the fuck? So anyway, he just starts to walk calmly towards Bran, and Jon follows to try and attack him, but the Night King decides to raise all the dead from the battle at that point, which kind of just made life harder on everyone. So, yeah, that's where we're at now.
I just gotta tell y'all that I made notes to remind myself of what happens in each scene. And this is what they look like. It is not effective. But, anyways, just like we all expected, after the Night King makes everyone come back to life, the people in the crypt come back to life. Why did they hide in the crypt? Why didn't anybody think about that? I know you don't have like Walking Dead and Night of the Living Dead there, but it's pretty basic. Anyways, so then people start popping out of these old crypts, and ladies are all just screaming, and everyone's just like looking around instead of like making a plan. So then some poor lady gets squished while they all go to try to find, which they hid behind a crypt. I don't even understand really what happened down there. Like, it was just a bunch of people wandering around, and then suddenly they're like hidden. Ew. I don't really know what happens after that because my notes are terrible. Well, I think basically everybody's fighting. Jon's fighting, and then right at the last second, Dany comes and dragons him, gets all not him, the people, and saves him. And then in stirring script writing, says, Bran, and she says, go. This is kind of silly. And then, I threw my notes. And then, he's going through Winterfell, and it's just bad. Everyone's surrounded. Everybody. Sam's on the ground. You think Sam's like, this is the moment. Sam's about to go. And then he doesn't, which, oh my god, it's so stressful. And then, so all the things start calling on Drogon, and you're like, no! Ah! And then, so Dany jumps off, and then Drogon goes in the air and starts like shaking him off, and then they start falling to the ground and still being like alive and stuff. And she's like, this is gross and creepy. And then right at the last second, Jorah comes and cuts this dude's head off right before he's about to get her, and it's totally badass. And those are all the things I can remember.
Okay, so right after Theon runs out of arrows, we have a cut to Jorah and Dany fighting side by side, which is bittersweet. I've always been team Jorah and Dany. wanted them to be together. So for them to be fighting together in this is fitting. Then it cuts to the castle and to the crypt where the dead are now invading, and Sansa and Tyrion are hiding together. And I've had a prediction ever since I rewatched the series before the season began that Tyrion and Sansa will end up together by choice this time. And this moment was good for me because I think that, you know, they really do have a mutual respect and love for each other. And maybe they will. I think it'll all depend on if Dany becomes queen or not, because if she does, then I think Tyrion maybe will stay and be her hand. But if not, I can see a future for him and Sansa. Maybe if so too, if Sansa comes around to the idea of the North joining the Seven Kingdoms, but we'll see. So anyway, they had a really sweet moment where they, you know, just looked at each other and he reached down and kissed her hand. And then they made a break for it and were able to join the Varys and the other people that were hiding in the crypt. So then at the same time, Viserion is attacking the castle walls and Jon is trying to get through the castle to get to Bran, because that's what he was trying to do after Dany like saved him. He was like, Bran, and so, you know, that's what he's been trying to do, is get to Bran, but he's kind of stuck because of this damn dragon. And then it cuts to everybody just fighting as hard as they can. Grey Worm and Brienne and Jaime side by side, and Sam is crying, and the music here though just carries everything. I think the score throughout the entire series has been excellent, but for this episode, with as little dialogue as there is, the music really had to carry it, and I thought it really did it well, especially at this last kind of fighting montage scene while the Night King is getting closer and closer to Bran. So then the Night King gets to where Bran is, and Theon has been fighting all these walkers off by himself with just a bow, which is incredible because Theon started as such a scared little shit for most of the series, and for him to just come through and be brave and do what he had to do is just fantastic. Him and Melisandre both in this episode got me. They're two characters I thought I would never cry about, but I've been in tears every time I've watched it. So I've watched it 3 times now. So yeah, it really got me. And when Theon tells Bran that he's a good man and thanks him, it's just, you know, validation for Theon. It's what Theon needed to hear. He's wrestled with who he is and, you know, his lack of courage the whole series, and for him to finally be brave and get that validation from a Stark, from Bran, who's someone he's considered a brother. They were raised as brothers, you know, was just a good point for Theon to go out on. So Theon charges the Night King and gets stabbed, and the Night King looks up at Bran and just looks down. And Bran just looks down. And then Jon finally runs out of the castle to face Viserion, just as Theon is dying on the ground. So it's a, you know, emotional moment.
So after Theon's death, we move outside to see where Dany and Jorah are fighting the Whites. Jorah is being stabbed repeatedly, and Dany is just in disbelief. So she grabs a weapon and starts slashing the Whites that are coming to attack Jorah, who's already heavily wounded. Then we see that Jon sees that the gigantic ice dragon Viserion is kind of destroying everything in his path. He's just slashing out at the castle, throwing his blue ice fire towards everything and destroying the entire structure. So he's like planning a strategy to try to jump up and kill him. the White Walkers and the Night King approach Bran, and there's like a gust of wind that I thought was very interesting, kind of like brushing through one of the White Walker's hair, and I thought at first that that was maybe Jon had killed the dragon and that was it, but then we see that that Bran and the Night King have this really intense like eye staring contest. And we see from Bran's perspective that Arya is chomping at the Night King, and he swiftly turns around and grabs her by the neck as she is like pointing down her dagger. And in the very swift move that she had used over like 2 seasons, she switches the blade from one hand to the other, and stabs him right where the Children of the Forest stabbed the first man that they turn into the White Walker, which is the Night King. So then you're like, oh my gosh, it was Arya. Oh my god, little lady, you're such a badass. And the Night King kind of like explodes and shatters into a million pieces, and everyone, the whites, the undeads, his ministers, the White Walkers, every single member of his army kind of like explodes and turns into shattered glass. And I think with this moment where Arya kills the Night King, they just want to like close her training circle, because we see her through the episode that she's using every single tactic that she has learned over her training, like during the time that where she's like using her super cool weapon. We see her dancing how she danced in season 1 when Ned signed her up for battle classes. And then we see that she's super swift and super stealthy in the very dark kind of library room where she uses all the training that she got from Hakim Jagar. And then we see her use that little maneuver of switching the blade from one hand to the other that she used to defeat Brienne, I think it was last season. And also that she uses the dagger that Bran gave her, that is also the blade, the dagger that was meant to kill Bran back in season 1 when he survived the fall. But Littlefinger got it and gave it to Bran so he could defend himself. And Bran gave it to Arya. I think maybe he had like a vision, because we know that Bran cannot see the future, but he does get visions. And maybe he got a vision of like the Night King being destroyed by this exact same dagger. A lot of people have been saying that maybe Arya is the prince or princess that was promised, but I don't think that's the case. I think the books kind of deviate a little bit from the series at this point. Well, like 2 seasons later. But I don't think that Arya is the king that was promised. I don't think she's Azor Ahai, and because the prophecy states that there's supposed to be a Targaryen, and Arya is clearly not. I do think, however, that she's the Valonqar that's gonna kill Cersei, because in the prophecy it says that Cersei is going to be killed by Valonqar, which is a sibling. It doesn't have a gender, according to what Missandei told her, told somebody a few seasons ago. So I do think that maybe Jaime dies at some point, and Arya steals his face and kills Cersei, making Cersei believe that she was killed by her brother. Or maybe Tyrion, the little brother, kills her. Another point that people can look at is that, I don't know if you remember that Tywin kind of took Arya under his wing when she was trying to be passed as a little boy. And he kind of took her under his wing. So that could mean that she's Cersei's little sister. And then we remember that back in season 3 or 4, Melisandre runs into Arya and tells her that I see a darkness in you. eyes that you'll shut forever, blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, and at this point we know that Arya has killed Walder Frey that has brown eyes, had brown eyes. She killed the Night King that has blue eyes, and maybe the green eyes are Cersei's. Maybe she's gonna kill Cersei. Maybe we don't know. And another thing that I was thinking about when going over how Arya was saved by Beric and how Melisandre said that he's been resurrected many times by the Lord of Light to serve a purpose. I think the purpose was that the Lord of Light just wanted to defeat the Night King and the Long Night. And that's why Beric was resurrected so many times, and then he just was like a human shield to Arya. That was very, very, very nicely done.
Okay, so Arya, stabs the Night King and the dead shatter into ice, and everyone fighting just stops and is like, what the actual fuck? They're in shock and they can't believe that they've won. Then it cuts to individuals' faces and it cuts to Sansa, and you can't tell if she's like about to have an orgasm or a panic attack. So it's a little weird. But anyway, so Bran and Arya just stare at each other, because what else is Bran gonna do but stare? And Dany holds Jorah and weeps as he dies, which was really sad for me, as I've already mentioned. I ship them so hard, so that was a little emotional, but of course I kind of always knew he would die in her arms, or that she would die protecting him. So one way or the other, it's the only way it could go. So yeah. Okay, so the final scene is Melisandre, and she walks past the Hound and out the door of the castle, and we see Davos is watching her, and she just walks out very calm. She looks tired. She looks, ready for what's next, and she just walks out calmly, takes off the necklace that's been giving her the power ability to stay alive for centuries. I think I read it was like 600 years. I'm not positive on that, but a long time. Just drops it casually on the ground and walks out until she becomes old and disintegrates. And, she's known her purpose, her timing the whole time. She's been like, it's not my time yet. It's not my time yet. And when it was her time, she embraced it and she let go. Davos, I think, is the only person that's wrestled with her as much as I have. He's hated her as much as I have, but also been in awe of her as much as I have. And yeah, you really identify with his character a lot. I think probably we all identify with him and the back and forth with Melisandre. So yeah, it was a good way for her to go out. She had to die. So it's the best way she could have, was doing everything she did in this battle, from the moment she arrived to her making Arya realize her destiny, to now. It's a good, fitting ending.
So, for the fourth episode, I think we're gonna see a lot of strategy. They're gonna definitely spend some time in Winterfell, showing like the rebuilding of the kingdom after this like horrible battle and cleaning up all those dead bodies. And maybe they're gonna send messages to Yara in the Iron Islands, and then to Winterfell, saying like, "Hey, we survived. We're coming for you." I think Cersei's gonna start planning with Qyburn what to do with the Golden Company once the Unsullied and all the remaining people in Winterfell come to King's Landing. And let me know what you guys think.
All right, so follow-up comments and predictions for what's next. First of all, I didn't get to talk about the Night King death scene, so my first comment is about that. Arya, totally did not expect that. I watched that when it's like 4:30 in the morning my time here in Prague, so I like had to hold back screaming because our walls are really thin and we have noise ordinances here. And yeah, so I didn't want to wake up the neighbors or my flatmate. Um, so that was crazy. Wondering does that mean Arya was the prince that was promised? There's been some speculation on that, so it's interesting. Also, Missandei's little clapback at Sansa when Sansa's like the dragon queen, and Missandei's like, oh yeah, she's so terrible. She's here saving your asses because without her in this army, like, you would have no chance at all. Um, so yeah, I think those are my main two comments about this episode that I didn't get to talk about. Oh, and Lyanna Mormont, just the smallest person killing like the biggest giant, and she's ruled this whole show. She's amazing. Love her character. House Mormont's gone, y'all. Like her and Jorah. But yeah, so one more house that's not around anymore. All right, so now talking about what's next. Well, Dany's lost pretty much all her Dothraki. A good portion of her Unsullied. She's like down in numbers when it comes to armies. And Cersei still has the Golden Company and all of her numbers. So I'm predicting a couple different ways it could go. Either they send word to Essos because Daario Naharis is still in Essos, and they somehow get them over here to fight. I don't see that happening because I'm pretty sure Dany took all the ships from there, so I don't know really how they would get over quickly. The other way I see it going is that Jaime gets back into Cersei's good graces and he kills her. Another way it could go is that Arya is able to like kill Qyburn or something and use his face to get close to Cersei. But I feel like that would be a lot of Arya being the hero. Like she was the hero in this one. I feel like it's time for someone else. Like really the way I'd like to see it go is that Jaime kills her and returns the throne to Daenerys because he stole it from the Targaryens first. He's kind of the reason for all this. So for him to kill Cersei and return the throne to the Targaryens would be interesting. And I kind of have a feeling that Jon doesn't really want to be the leader, so he would make a deal with Dany not to contest it as long as the North can have their freedom with either he or probably, hopefully, Sansa as Queen in the North. So that's the way that I see it go. We definitely have to have Clegane Bowl because that's like the number one thing that has to happen is the Hound in the Mountain, and hopefully the Hound kills the Mountain, but I kind of have a feeling they're going to kill each other. Also in this episode, I really loved the Hound and Arya watching each other's back so much. Like she at the beginning shooting the arrow to get that walker behind him, and then the whole time when he was like paralyzed and couldn't fight, but managed to pull it together for her, was their relationship is just perfect. It's great. I love it. So anyway, can't wait to see what the next 3 episodes hold. I can't believe we're almost there. Please write what you think is going to happen in the comments because we have all new theories now that this battle's over. It's kind of been the big talking point. So now we can talk about the end game. All right.